This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Just a good-looking man, and any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray
Place to Be Nation, welcome back to another edition of the movie review of the day here on the Pop Experience. I am Steve Riddle, back again for another go-round, and today we are continuing with our theme week this week, where we are looking at a very interesting group of films here. Of course, for those that know and are watchers of the Discovery Channel will know that every July they, of course, have their iconic Shark Week, which is very popular and very anticipated. And in lieu of that, we are now doing our own theme week on killer sharks for this week. So obviously when you think of films about sharks, you immediately think of Jaws, which I actually already covered earlier this year when we did our theme week on summer blockbusters. So there have been other films about sharks, though. We will, of course, like I said, be covering them this week. And the film I'm going to be covering for today is one that kind of fell by the wayside a bit, just because of it being a little bit of a smaller film, and one that when it came out kind of got overlooked a little bit, but it is kind of one of those more interesting shark films that I think is that we have. And the film I'm doing for you today is Open Water. It was first released on October 26, 2003 as part of the Hamptons International Film Festival, and then released on a wide basis on August 6, 2004. A budget of $500,000, box office $55.5 million, so pretty big success there. Starring Blanchard Ryan, Daniel Travis, Saul Stein, Michael E. Williamson, Cristina Zenato, John Charles, and Estelle Lau. It's based off a true story of a real life couple who disappeared. And were not. And I don't believe they were found. They weren't. This couple were found. But here in the film, this is about a couple who go on a scuba diving trip, get left behind by the group, and are forced to contend with a school of sharks that are circling them as they fight for survival in the open water. So, as I usually do, I will start off here with the 3 things that worked and 3 things that didn't work. So, 3 things that worked. Number 1, I like how the film kind of almost presents itself as a documentary without actually being a documentary. Like if you look at the way they kind of shot the film, it has that sort of documentary film feel to it, but like I said, it's definitely not a documentary film. It is just a standard film, but again, just kind of the cuts between how we see the couple in the water, and then we kind of dive underneath where we look like we're watching like a nature documentary, seeing all these sharks going around, which I think it was a nice kind of different way they filmed this kind of movie, because normally a film like this would be you think would be more like big budgeted and more like just so many different big shots in here, and they kept it very simplistic, and I think it really helped because films like this don't need to be very over the top. And especially if you look at the runtime, it's only 79 minutes, so it's not that long, and which is good because they didn't really need to stretch it out that much, but again, I really enjoyed that style there. Number 2, again, kind of playing into if you remember when I talked about Jaws, about how like in the first half of the film, it was all about building up the suspense, and like you would only see like the shark fin here and there, and it wasn't until the second half of the film when we really got up close and personal with the shark. Same thing here, where we don't really, it's obviously, we see like fins here and there, and then periodically when they appear underwater, we might see like, a shark here and there. And again, just really building up that suspense and that kind of feeling of danger that is there. And it kind of starts with with them getting bit by jellyfish, and then that's kind of begins the chain reaction towards the sharks eventually attacking them. So again, very very well done in building up the suspense and really kind of letting you know that the danger is there even though you can't see it. And I think again, really good horror films um really play that up very very well. And I think particularly when it's a film this like this where it's more which is a smaller film, I think it really increases on that. So really good job for them there. And then number 3, we don't know. I mean, again, it's kind of implied that the real life couple that the film is based off of never they were never found. So it kind of you kind of almost have to have that same aspect here where you don't actually, because obviously if this was kind of, I would say if this was more of a bigger budgeted film, they would do a big thing where the couple gets rescued at the just in time. But here we see both of them basically, they we see Daniel, the husband, he dies, and then and then Susan, the woman, lets him go, and then he gets ends up being devoured by the sharks. And then she basically just like screw it, I'm just gonna basically accept my fate. And I mean, we don't see I mean, I'm assuming it's a play that she probably drowned first before the sharks got her, but we don't actually know because we just see her go underwater, and then that's pretty much and then the film closes out. So but again, playing up to the real life aspects of the real life disappearance, where the real life couple was never found. So it only makes sense that this couple here in the film, they never get found as well. So again, playing up to that as well, I think was really well done. Excuse me. And now we'll do the 3 things that didn't work. Number 1, I get where they were kind of going with the fact that this couple, we think they're a normal couple, but then we realize there's a lot of problems between them, and the fact that when they're in the stranded out at sea, they're very they kind of let their emotions come out and basically kind of like snap at each other. Which, I mean, if this was real life, I'd probably be the same thing, but it just feels kind of weird that these 2 people who are basically kind of now having to rely on each other for survival are becoming so hostile towards each other. So again, I'm sure that's probably what would happen in real life, but just felt kind of I don't know, just felt very tacked on. They were trying to build some unnecessary drama there between the couple, particularly knowing that their lives were on the line here. Number 2, I'm assuming when they were scuba diving, they didn't use that much oxygen. So when they see these, when they realize that they've been left behind and they see these other boats kind of off to the side, it's like, wouldn't your first thought to try to swim towards them, even though they are kind of far away? I mean, you would figure their oxygen tanks were, if they had to use them, they were still kind of full enough that they would be able to end up reaching one of the boats. And I mean, I know it's 2 small people in a big vast ocean, but you're telling me somebody on, especially when we see that like big anchor, that somebody on that ship doesn't notice them. I mean, it just seems kind of, again, I don't know, it just seems very unusual that this, you got this big old tanker, and there's got to be somebody up at the crow's nest who's got to have some binoculars on him, and even even if you see something faintly in the distance, that you would reach out about it. So I don't know. Just, again, not that big of a deal, but it's just kind of weird for me. But number 3, this is a big deal for me. The fact that this scuba diving crew has got to be the most incompetent crew ever. I mean, you got, how do you first miscount everything? Because what happened was there's a group. Our main couple here is part of a group of 20. One of the people in the group forgot his mask, so he's not able to go in with everybody else. But then this other couple comes out because the girl is having trouble with her ears, so she can't dive too deep. So then the guy who was supposed to look behind, he then kind of takes her place. And the guy and the main guide is keeping track of everybody. He marked down the couple when they first came up, but then when the guy and the husband went back in the water, he then basically just double counted them, and it's like. And he didn't even, think to, kind of stop and think before they kind of took off to be like, my paper says 20, but I'm but I don't see 20. So, and then the fact that it took 24 hours in essence for them to realize that some of their gear is missing, and this couple and our couple left behind their stuff, then they kind of realize, oh shit, we left something behind. It's just, see, this is why you got to be careful when it comes to doing these like tours and excursions, unless they're like somebody that if you're trying to save a few dollars, I mean, it's one thing, but you really got to know who your trust, really trust, that these people know what they're doing. So so again, just I just think that looking back, it's kind of unfortunate that this scuba group was so incompetent that they weren't able to discover that not only were two people missing, but like part of their equipment was missing. So again, just something I just noticed while I was watching. Now we'll go ahead and get into my awards here, and this will be kind of interesting. So my MVP, I mean, I had to go double here on. I mean, that's both Blanchard Ryan and Daniel Travis, who play Susan and Daniel, because it pretty much is all about them, particularly in the once they get stranded. It's basically the next like almost hour of the film is basically them in water trying to survive, and they both did a really good job in really bringing the fear up and trying and just projecting how they would really feel if they were caught out in the middle of the ocean and surrounded by all these sharks. So they were also, well, Susan was my favorite character, more so than Daniel. Daniel did come off as a little bit of an asshole, but he's not my least favorite. My least favorite is I believe it's Davis, who's the main man in the group, in the scuba group. Again, just because it's like show a little bit more competence and trying to realize that everybody's on board before you leave, and then maybe Susan and Daniel wouldn't have been left behind. So again, just the stuff that I'm thinking about here, just again, just kind of just aggravates me. And I should also mention really quick, so one of the other members of the tour group, Linda, played by Cristina Zenato, is an actual shark diver and conservationalist. So I thought that was actually really kind of cool that they brought somebody in who actually knows all about sharks and can kind of explain what the different aspects would be. So I thought that was really so I like that. And then favorite scene, I mean, I think it would have to be just when the group is at their location and we see everybody scuba diving and we see all these like really beautiful shots of the ocean and all like the animals and the reef and everything. I think that was really, really well shot. So I think that would probably be my favorite scene. And then overall grade, I thought this was a good film. Again, if it flowed pretty well, considering a lot of the focus was basically just focused on two people in this open water surrounded by sharks. But I thought that it was okay. It was good. Again, not one that's I think gets talked about enough. Maybe just again because it fell through the cracks there. So I'm actually going to go a solid 7 out of 10. I think when you talk about shark films, there are obviously much bigger films involving sharks that you think about first. But if you haven't seen this, I'm again, it's not that long. It is on HBO Max, so I mean, if you want some different type of shark movie to watch, I would say check this out. Something quick and easy, and kind of keeps you in that mood of Shark Week here. So. But that is going to do it for me this week. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for continuing to support us as we are approaching 150 episodes. Crazily enough, we're already at that point. Obviously, it's a kind of a drop in the bucket compared to where we are over on the our other daily pod here on this feed, the Video Jukebox on the Day, where we're about at around 1,100 episodes. So obviously, we got a long way to go before we can catch up. But thank you again for listening. Thank you for continuing to support us. I know we've got some good theme weeks coming up later this, throughout the summer. And I know we still got one or two more giant films coming out this year. It's been kind of an interesting summer because really besides Toy Story 5, most of the other films that have come out, Mandalorian, Supergirl, Moana, Minions and Monsters, they're not doing that well. So obviously we got another big, couple big films like I mentioned. Like I said, we still have the Odyssey. We have a new Spider-Man film. We'll see how they do and see if we can end the summer on a better note. But yeah, be on the lookout for those because we'll talk about them on this pod going forward. So with that, I am Steve Riddle. This has been the movie review of the day here on the Pop Experience, and we'll see you next time.